Namaste, beautiful souls, and a big blessing coming from Lemuria. Here I am in the divine realm of Vanuatu. Some of these traditional names from these regions really gets us back in touch with our light language, because it's those vibratory sounds that we would have made as traditional beings, I guess, or that primordial aspect of self that was learning just to vibrate the vocal cords, like tu, Vanuatu, and light language, it's in us, our starry language. Ishikuna ikutignakia olakishikuna inukuitika onakia. So the mermaids are coming through from the water, blessings out to you, reminding you to be playful just like children, make sounds even if it makes no sense to your logical mind. Know that you've been engaged in thousands of years of programming and ways of thinking that perhaps are in fact distorted and cause you to downgrade your frequency, ultimately downgrading your DNA, your diamond-esque DNA structure starts to be corroded. Namaste, beautiful souls. That was just a little intro from me from Lemuria, but I'm actually here in Australia with none other than this beautiful, gorgeous man, Chris Bygraves.
Hello all, good morning.
We've got some people already jumping on. Comments are coming in. Love from the USA. Thank you so much. So good to see you here. Forever Moo. Oh, we're loving the Lemurian vibes. It's absolutely fantastic. And we've got the amazing Raeline Brady going to come on very, very soon. And then Valerie Elster from the USA as well is joining us later on today. There's going to be a lot of activations, a lot of light language today. And Chris, we've got some, quite funny stories actually. Let me just pass it over to you just for a little bit, and then I'll get into some more introductions.
Yeah, well, huge show today, as Carrie said. Got some fantastic guests and an amazing subject. So hopefully we can shed some light and entertain at the same time, and go a little bit comedic, go a little bit serious, all of the above. It's all part of the Lightworkers Lounge to sort of not only hit these topics as hard as we possibly can, but obviously bring some joy and some laughter through as well. And I guess Carrie's just given me the moment here to explain a funny story just to sort of lighten the mood. That I've only just got back myself from the most amazing South Pacific country in Vanuatu. And the reason I was over there was I took my father for his 73rd birthday, and he doesn't sort of get to travel a lot overseas these days. So we took it as an opportunity to have a bit of father-son time in a paradise. So that's the reason why we went there. Plus, we've also got some wonderful friends over there too that we wanted to catch up with. So yeah, the situation with Vanuatu, I don't know if everyone knows globally, but during the time that we were there, which was only a couple of weeks ago, there was an airline collapse. So that they have a local airline called Air Vanuatu, and we managed to fly direct from Brisbane to Vanuatu, no problem. And the holiday was going swimmingly. Everyone was having a great time, and it just so happened that I could say it was we were meant to have a flight out on a Thursday, and it was meant to be like 11 o'clock in the morning flight. And my phone was going beep on the Wednesday evening, and there was some messages coming through that your flights had been cancelled, which is not unusual for Air Vanuatu, don't get me wrong. And I said to Dad, "Oh, look, obviously we're not flying out tomorrow, so we'll see how we go." Then suddenly there was these emails coming through going, "Oh no, it's not just cancelled. The airplane that you're going back, or the airline that you're going back with, has completely collapsed." And what I mean by that is it went into liquidation. So it basically, the business was defunct. So that kind of left us in a little bit of a position, because I don't know if you know Vanuatu well, but there's two major airports. There's one in the southern area called Port Vila, which is the capital. And we were a long way from Port Vila. We're in the northern part of Vanuatu, in a place called Espiritu Santo. And they've got a fairly smaller airport there. And that was the airport that only had Air Vanuatu planes coming in and out. So basically we were stranded. And Dad, being a pretty cool cat, he just thought, no, this is great, because I'm retired and I get to spend another however many days in paradise here, so I'm okay. I run a business, so I've got to get back to Australia. And unfortunately, I've had to sort of manage staff from overseas, and they didn't believe me. They were just like, look, if you wanted to spend more time with your dad, you should have just said. You didn't have to create all this drama. So anyway, basically moving on from that, the logistics are quite interesting in a very remote sort of country that doesn't have the infrastructures that we kind of have here in the Western world. So you can't jump on a bus or a train or a tram or a boat or whatever the case may be. And the people there are pretty cash. They're pretty cool. So they're on what's called Vanuatu time. And
Island time.
They have really no sense of schedules or timing or anything, or information is, sort of handed down through whispers and gossips, et cetera, et cetera. So unfortunately, knowing a few wonderful people there, I was trying to work out how the hell we're going to get to Port Vila, because there was this is another week later that I realized that there was going to be a flight out on a Friday. And I said to Dad, look, that's the one we've got to get. If we can get to Villa, which is, for the Australians listening, you're probably Gold Coast to Rockhampton. That's how far away we are having to get to another island. And in Vanuatu, there's over 600 islands. And it just so happens that these two were opposite each other, one at the north and one at the south. So some wonderful Vanuatuan people gave me the idea that there's a boat that actually goes all the way from the top to the bottom. And I thought, oh, this is a P&O fun ship. We're going to have a great time. The party's getting better. There'll be cocktails, there'll be bands playing.
So Chris told me he was going to do a Robinson Crusoe, and I said, Chris, because I lived there part of the time, and very primitive guys, we're talking very primitive islands. We're talking people that don't have electricity. You see the smoke going up each day at 4:30 p.m. People, living with the elements. Most beautiful, kind people in the world. They've actually even been rated as the friendliest people in the world. And I said, Chris, look, maybe take one of the straw mats, because the Nivan people sleep on straw mats still. Take one of the straw mats from our little shack there, and at least you can sleep on the floor when you get onto this ferry. Think about a ferry that just does a little 20-minute run across a city river. These are the kind of ferries you're getting on. Very exciting for the Nivan people. And I said, look, probably take a straw mat. You can sleep on the floor then. Pack some food. No, he says, like, the Nivan people have told me it's all great. It's lovely. You can get food. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. But anyway.
Yeah, the information was a little rusty. So I've decided that that's our best option. And this particular boat's called the Big Sister. And let's just say, as Carrie had suggested, it's certainly not a ship of any grandeur. It's more of a cargo ship that operates between the islands. So therefore, it gets not only loaded up with passengers, but everything in between. So when Dad and I were waiting at the port, there were livestock being loaded on, such as pigs and chickens and cattle. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then there's heavy machinery going on, because obviously these islands are very dependent upon this ship making stoppages for them, because they put in their orders into the main cities, and obviously they can get their supplies. So when I was lining up to get the ticket at the port there, I sort of mentioned that, I've got an elderly father here that, and they said, oh, you'll probably need the VIP. And I'm thinking, oh, VIP, this sounds all right. And they said, up at the top of the ship, you get, air conditioning. And I'm thinking, oh, this is fantastic. So I said, oh, for the minimal extra cost, give Dad a little bit of comfort. And so as everyone's being loaded on, as you can imagine, the livestock's going on first. That's on level 1. I'm thinking, well, thank God we're not on level 1. And there were many people staying on level 1 too with their beloved animals, and bless them. They wanted to make sure that they got to their island safe. Then there was level 2, which was mainly for most of the families in the villages, because when you've got, 5 or 6 sort of kids and so forth, they got them a little bit of extra room in that middle level. And then right up the top was the VIP, which is where Dad and I went up to. And it was, let's just say, in Vanuatu in terms, it was definitely luxurious. And it was certainly an interesting experience, because all you had kind of was like, if you can remember, like in the 70s, it used to go to like a cafe or whatever, and they had these donut style booths and a little table in front. That's pretty much the era we're talking about. So everyone was in these sort of half moon type seats, and that's where you were seated. There was certainly not a lot of leg room or could lay down. But the interesting information came because I thought, okay, it's obviously going to be a number of hours. It's okay. We'll be fine with that. And then the captain comes over the speaker and basically said, everyone needs to settle in, because we have a number of stops along the way. And I'm thinking, 1 or 2. Anyway, no, we had 6 island stops along the way. And he said,
and getting animals off. There was a breeding pig that was on the boat. The pig was in a bamboo kind of cage, I suppose.
Yeah.
And all the funny stories that went on getting this pig off onto one of the very remote islands, Epi Island, where they don't actually have a wharf. So it had to get into banana boats, and the comedy went on and on and on. So I heard all about it later. But the main crux to really tie in with our story today, and lots of storytelling with Raeline coming on as well, because she was in Bali at the same time, and I was receiving information from both Chris and Raeline, and all the activations were happening. We got the auroras in the sky at the same time that Raeline was activating in Bali and Chris was activating in Vanuatu. And he's a funny guy, but he is also a very deep, I'm going to speak for him, a very deep, soulful galactic warrior. And he actually knew there was a reason he needed to be out in the South Pacific. 27 hours, Chris. 27 hours of meditation, basically. But the activations were so intense. And you were speaking to Lemurian gods. And Chris and I did an astral when Chris got home. We went on a mission and we went down into the very much, I would say, a heart portal in the center of the Lemurian Ocean, right where Chris was sailing across. Now, we're talking some very remote island energy. We're talking places that only Vanuatu people normally go. White skins aren't normally out in these regions. It's rare. There was a reason this had to happen. And when the auroras went up in the sky, and obviously it's not just Chris and Raeline and myself, it's all of you that are listening here and many, many other people that were doing activation work, grid work at that particular time. And despite you not, finding out there actually was no food or water on this particular ferry, and 27 hours of very intense meditation, having to sit upright in this situation. And you had really no choice. You're a great meditator, but you said you went to some painful places internally, having to hold, but had so many actual enlightening, activating experiences. And so when he got home and we did this amazing astral mission and found out some very interesting things, mainly that a portal had opened at this time. And Raeline will back us up from her perspective and what happened in Bali. Like a heart portal, you can imagine a heart portal of Vanuatu opening up. It's the whole region of Lemuria. It's just that now, if you consider what's been going on in Hawaii, what's happened to Maui, you understand that this force is starting, this negative draconian force is starting to encroach on our beloved Lemurian zone. We're talking about primitive tribes who have higher activations of DNA strands that are holding the space and holding the balance here for the planet. Most people are interested in everything else that's going on in the world, but I know the people tuning in today, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. If we don't protect this realm in particular, I would suggest that the planetary balance will go off, and I wouldn't be surprised then if we have another repeat of what happened with Atlantis. And Valerie will be talking later today about the Atlantean timeline that we've been on. But to break it down, for me anyway, I've had a recurring dream since I was little of the big wave coming. And that's that Atlantis memory many of us have, that the big wave will come sooner or later to reset the realm if we don't keep rising in consciousness. It's just Mother Earth's prerogative. She's very patient. She gives us a galactic cycle to play these things out. We're coming to the end of the galactic cycle now. And so really it's go time. Where are you going to choose to be? And so, Chris, we went in and did this astral, and what we found, yes, this heart portal has opened, but interestingly, through that portal, we saw, now people who may know a little bit of what's going on in Antarctica, there's many countries that actually have stations there. They've got all their measuring devices. They are very interested in Antarctica and where that portal, if you think of it, a toroidal field, not what you've been told the Earth is, but a toroidal field that goes into the center. And think of a portal like the Bermuda Triangle, where ships just go missing. There's they can't even find the debris. There's something going on. There's vortexes and portals that are in the ocean. And of course, they marry up with our stargates. Raeline will be talking about how we've aligned now with the Orion stargate. It had been off. We've come back into alignment. There's a lot of positive things going on for us that are shifting consciousness again because of this Lemurian activation. But so we saw at the bottom here in the ocean, remember we're doing an astral meditation journey, we saw submarines that were part of these countries that are set up in Antarctica. Now, a lot of these countries are there not necessarily with the highest of intentions, wanting to figure out how they can shut these portals down, because as soon as we activate Lemuria, we are activating an Andromedan galactic timeline. So we're talking a very advanced civilization. Many of you listening would have already taken your consciousness into an intergalactic space in other previous incarnations, come back to Earth to help the upgrade. This portal has opened, but interestingly, Chris, if you go into that portal, and we saw all these submarines sitting around wanting to know there's something activated, what's going on? They're trying to shut this down. If you drop into this portal, and some of these submarines may indeed end up going through it, if you drop into this portal, you don't just go out to the Andromedan galaxy. We saw Anubis sitting on the gate. There's two ways. One's the Andromedan galaxy, and the other one, and Chris will explain this very well, where that other galaxy goes. And this is the real bifurcation of what's going on, because if you're coming to the end of a galactic cycle and you're still being an a-hole, and you're still a major narcissist and you think you can get away with it because you did in other lifetimes, but count up those lifetimes, boom, end of a galactic cycle. Where's the other galaxy, Chris, that this portal will take you?
Well, it's a galaxy that we've explained in other live streams before, but affectionately known, and it is a real galaxy. It's called the Tadpole Galaxy. And if you do some meditation, or if you go into the realms of understanding kind of what the Tadpole Galaxy is, I'll sort of set the scene for you a little bit. It's a very much a infinite space. It's kind of like where creation or you begin. So it's really going back to like an atom. So how you've worked through all of the lifetimes to getting yourself into a different realm or whatever dimension. At the moment, obviously, we're in the third dimension here as a human species. But a tadpole galaxy will really suck you back like a vacuum cleaner. It's like getting into a whirlwind or as watching the water go down the drain. It's like saying, okay, you've got to a certain point and you've learned sweet FA. So at the end of the day, it's kind of like, where have I got to go to pick up the pieces of my jigsaw puzzle of my existence? And as Carrie said, that if there's been traits of your behavior here that have been less than honorable, and, you know, talk about pandemics, probably one of the biggest pandemics on the planet now is narcissism. And it is alive and well, and it is affecting a lot of people, families, relationships, etc., etc. So that's just one of many traits that we all need to kind of work on as an individual, but we also need to work on ourselves whilst we're here. So, you know, we have many free options whilst we're here to better ourselves and become a more glowing human, I suppose, and try and pick up the pieces that we are needing to work on. So, cutting a long story short, yeah, if you're ignoring those signs, or if you're being, head in the sand type scenario, of course, at some point there are repercussions to your actions here and the way that you have A, treated someone, or B, treated yourself. And I think we can all understand that. And the repercussions can be so dramatic to the point where it needs to start again from scratch. And if you're in a position where you have to be sucked down the drain pipe to go back to such a place where you're given a second chance, and it literally like in a reincarnation scenario, but you're starting literally from a grain of sand and having to work back to this point where once again the sliding doors will appear and you'll get to make a decision. So in a nutshell, that is what your tadpole galaxy is. It's basically the part where if you could imagine a tadpole that then gives birth, obviously then it goes through the cycles, etc., etc. It's the same type of philosophy if you're sort of looking for an analogy for it.
It's if you look at it, it is one half of the yin and yang symbol. So it's those who are polarizing into one aspect of their nature, as opposed to unifying the divinity. Divinity means two vines. So it's the god, goddess within. It's the Heros Gamos, the twin flaming within of the Kundalini. For the yogis that are listening here, I can see some of our graduates are here. It's your Ida and Pingala nadis, different ways that we will describe the same thing. So anyone who polarizes leads, it leads them into that narcissistic timeline. And so the tadpole galaxy, as Chris said, that's a real galaxy. And it's infancy stage. It's reverting or regressing back to that polarized self until the awakening comes that there must be union. Now, union must start within, and then we choose to unify, of course, from that point with each other. And so the other part of that portal that's opened is that Andromedan galactic timeline. We're talking for some of the beings here, and probably more so, I would say, for the people that are listening here today, that's a very super conscious timeline. That's you even bypassing. There's a lot of narratives around that Earth herself is going to 5D, and I would say that's correct. She's having an upgrade in consciousness from 3D to 5D. 5D is a very unconditionally loving realm, but it's not dissimilar to the way that we experience the 3D. Dolores Cannon brought through from, and I'm talking thousands of regressions, this information that for the first time in the galactic history, we will remain embodied whilst moving into a fifth dimensional consciousness. Now, that just gave me goosebumps on the top of my head just to even say that out loud. That's how powerful that is. So anyone who's here on the planet has that opportunity. But for some of the Lightworkers, Gridworkers who came on a specific mission to help that upgrade of Earth, that Andromedan timeline, and you've got to see, when I'm talking galaxy, see it in terms of archetypal energy. There's an opportunity for many to go intergalactic. So we're talking for many people, as I say, more so the people that are drawn to watching this kind of show, because I guess for other people that may come across this show, it's just not going to make sense at all. It may plant seeds for them, and that's fantastic. But for many of you, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So this is the real kind of, I would say, a trifurcation then. So you've got some people, good humans, that are going into fifth dimensional consciousness, the narcissists, for want of a better term, that are going into the tadpole galaxy, or as one of our a beautiful friend of mine from the US, I don't know whether she's listening, she calls it the toad pole galaxy. And I think if you know anything about the draconians, I think some of the draconian generals actually look like toads. They look like Jabba the Hutt, don't they? You know, like
yeah,
Star Wars and the Orion Wars and all the galactic wars. There's a lot of codes in there. So the toad pole galaxy. Some are going intergalactic on that Andromedan timeline. So, yeah, interesting things are going on right now for us.
Well, in honor to the lovely lady from the US, she's not wrong, because part of the Draco star system is a connection to the tadpole galaxy. So, geographically, where it is positioned is right next to the Draco star system. So she's on the money. she knew.
That's right. So, you know, I mean, we laugh about things, and you've got to laugh, because remember, we're just consciousness having experiences. Even for those that are going into the tadpole galaxy, they're really coming up against their own hall of mirrors. So where they may have thought they could get away with certain very nefarious behaviors, where they're literally siphoning other people's energy to sustain themselves, what they're going to find out in their own hall of mirrors in the tadpole galaxy is how they treated others was essentially how they treated themselves. So they come up against their own reflection until they choose love, until they make that internal decision that love is the way home. These beings will literally shut down the heart center to overdevelop their mental faculties. Many narcissists are very intelligent. They're very strategic. They're very manipulative. They know how to play people off against each other. They have all of these tools in their arsenal that are set upon creating degradation ultimately across the realm so that they rise. It's a false notion. But because Mother Earth and the divine gives us this, Mother Earth really gives us the playground. The divine gives us the free will. Go about your business, my children. Do what you will. Make your choice. You wanted to have this incredible opportunity to make choice. Our animals, our plant life, they're all part of the natural order. Humans, are we part of the natural order? We could be. We could slip back into the divine frequency, but it is our choice. And if you're not, if you're consciously choosing to shut down the heart, to overdevelop your operating system or your mind, now, of course, we need to use the operating system. It needs to be in tandem with the heart, and also with our gut, with our instinct. And for those who go deeper into their spiritual journeys, you know, all the 7 chakras and then into the galactic chakras. If we're not developing that part of ourselves, you know, bye-bye, off you go to the whole galaxy. So we can't feel bad for these people. They do have a choice to upgrade from there. Many people will say that possibly they will in fact face, you know, full deletion. I don't know, I don't know other journeys that we all need to go on to if we want to find more information. But it's very important right now that we, because this is about Lemuria Activated, that we talk about what's been going on in New Caledonia. And I am so proud of my brothers and sisters there, because I live part of the time in Vanuatu. It's very, very close by. The Vanuatu people, their government has, became sovereign, I suppose, or independent. I think they're into their 44th years. Unfortunately for New Caledonia, they're still under French rule. They've been allowing their people to live in a primitive sense, even though there's developing areas, obviously in the cities, so to speak, or the main towns. But there'd been a push just recently to take the decision-making away from the tribe, so from the chiefs and the queens. Now, the way that it works in these areas is there's many chiefs and many queens. And so they come together, the chiefs and the queens come together, probably more so the chiefs, I would say, come together and they make decisions for the betterment of the all. The French wanted to take that power away from them, and we saw a lot of rioting from the local people. They really rose up, they stood up, and Macron, the French president, said he was going to send 1,000 French soldiers to shut them down, and it just absolutely broke my heart after what we saw happen in Maui. And I thought, well, they're coming, and they're coming strong. And whilst none of us do support violence, of course, there was a reason. There was a reason these tribes rose up, and they've succeeded. They've managed to push back enough, and Macron has said, oh, no, nothing to see here. Oh, no, I got it wrong. No, we'll go back, let the tribes, maintain their own sovereignty within these areas. So it was a big, huge win for the realm of Lemuria, or Oceana, we might call it in a modern sense. And in particular, I do want to say, because someone came onto my Facebook page just recently when I said we were going to do this show, she was very upset that people had died in these riots, local people had died in these riots. But what I want to say to that is we really need to get over the fact, and I say this with complete love in my heart, we need to get over the fact that death is the enemy. Death is part of the natural order. And if you look at the movie Hunger Games, you will see that when they chose to rise up and ultimately defeat Capital, which is really our elites, it's a depiction of our elites, the 1%, the ones that are ruling us, many people chose and knew that they would die in the push, in the initial push. That's part of their hero's journey. You cannot take away people's right to put themselves on the line, put their bodies on the line. And these primitive people, these natives, they know that they're not going to perish as such. Yeah, it's the physical might go, but their consciousness remains. Remember, these people are way more enlightened than many white skins. They see things in a very different way. So all the projections that was so sad, in one sense it is. In the other sense, I believe we need to rejoice in the heroes that knew, okay, if a few had to go and cross over, they knew they'd reincarnate. That's okay. It's better than allowing these draconian systems to come into their beautiful realms, which would create more death, more destruction over time. So I feel like, many of us in the Western nations understand what this push has been about. We're going through it. We've been going through it since 2020. And we cannot allow these realms, the realm of Oceana, to fall to the quote unquote dark side. Yes, thank you. Beautiful comment. Death is part of our natural order and cycles of existence, because you remember in 2020 that's what they used to control the people. And now we're finding out, they're having to get out in front of it, that the jab, is in fact causing these sudden deaths. So many things that we can discuss in that sense. But let's just, inwardly hold space for the realm of Lemuria, Oceana, and know that that's where the support needs to be, because these people are holding the planetary balance. They have a much higher awareness than most of us do. They see through a lot of what's going on. Because I get to live with these people, they tell me all the time, about lizard man. They know lizard man. Oh, he lizard man. White skin comes in and wants to use them for cheap labor, but take all the money himself, doesn't work as a whole. He lizard man. They see differently to all of us. They know what's going on. We need to protect these people, because these are the people that will lead us out of this chaos and out of this destruction. So I want to bring Raeline on, but we can't see her video at the moment. And let's see, Raeline. I can see that you're in our green room, so to speak, but I can't see your video, my darling. So I'll let Chris have a little chat while I do some messages here with Raeline. She's going to maybe jump back in.
Yeah, well, basically the discussion point today around Lemuria is going to be quite fascinating, obviously, because we all have a perception of what Lemuria may or may not be in your mind's eye or in your third eye. We may have also felt that we have had activated lives there as well. You're talking about areas such as the Atlantean areas as well, which are, obviously we all know the stories and the history of that. So when we're sort of talking about the Lemurian areas of the world, it's predominantly through that South Pacific Gateway. So whether you're talking about, the mermaid history there, the Neptunes, Polaris, there's so many deities through that area that we connect to. And there's reasons why you're connecting to these deities and these stories is because you may feel that it has been part of your journey as well. And it's a very important part of the journey too, because it's very water-based. So it's part of our emotional technology in our body as well, that we are able to feel and have that heart sense, the purging of water, the purity, the clarity that comes through us. So it is an important part of the makeup of Earth, but it's also a very important part of the makeup or the genesis of our galactic history as well. Because there's a lot of deities that have come through there too that are still having a massive influence on how that, the portals are projected through there. Also with regards to the rising of what's going on today. I mean, Lemuria has remained, in an affectionate word, reasonably dormant for quite some period of time. And there's many reasons for that too, which we'll probably touch on. But there is, I like to sort of use that word, that Lemuria rising, and it literally is. You can, excuse me, you can feel it like a big wave, like a big tidal wave that's kind of immersing itself off the bottom of the ocean. It is showing its strength, and it's also showing its beauty behind the element of water as well. So it's coming back into our lives. We're starting to be more passionate. We're feeling more about these causes, how it's affecting us, our family, and our children. That level of emotion that's coming back through the heart is a lot to do with Lemuria, re-showing or presenting itself again, each within all of us, because we have a strand of DNA that connects us to Lemuria. So just sort of raise that point that we're all in this as far as what we're feeling.
Yeah. Before I bring Raeline on, we've got her video working now. So there's me and my beautiful Chief Natu. And we could tell stories for forever, but this show will end up being too long. But I'll tell you a very quick story that happened with Chris and I. So Chief Natu is the brother of Chief Mueli, Chief Tako Mueli, who only just passed away, 6 years ago it was.
Yeah, roughly, yeah.
He was one of the most beloved chiefs of the island where I live, which is Aure Island. And Chris and I went for a walk. The last time we were there together, went for a walk into the jungle, wanting to go and see Chief Natu. We take it very seriously, like receiving guidance from the chief. And he wasn't around. Look, sometimes they just sort of go off missing, don't they? They're not always where you think they're going to be. He wasn't around, but we ended up running into a lady who I hadn't met before, and she welcomed us into her home. We found out she was the daughter of his brother, Chief Takao, the previous chief. She was like in tears. She said, I knew you were coming. I knew you were coming. Now, remember, these people talk to spirits all the time. Like, not all of them. Some of them are getting a little bit more westernized, but when you're getting into the remote areas where we live, they're discussing things on other realms and other timelines, and they love the 3D as well, but they're living multidimensionally. She's crying, oh my gosh, I knew you were coming. We thought, oh, okay, this is interesting. She said, oh, my father told me you were coming today. Now, we found out that her father's Chief Takao passed away 6 years to the day that we turned up to meet, or to, we're trying to find Chief Natu, that we ran into this beautiful soul. I'd show you a photo of her, but she's asked me, some of the indigenous don't like their photos being shown for specific reasons, that they feel if someone has negative intentions, they can start interfering with their soul. So she specifically asked me she's not ready yet. She may be one day. And so she took us, his grave is there on the property. So she took us and we sat there at the grave and talked to him in spirit, and, got a lot of information from him. And he was part of what was going on with the astral mission that we did. He was with you when you went out onto the seas, the open seas.
He was.
He's been such a powerful guide for us. But we were supposed to leave that day. We were getting on a flight, only in a few hours. Something said, we've got to go see the chief. So we just follow guidance. We didn't know. We thought we were going to see the chief that was alive. No, we were going to see the chief in spirit, and he told his daughter that we were coming, and it was very, very powerful. So we've got so many stories to tell because we've been really in a supernatural space. But we're going to bring on the amazing, the one and only Raeline Brady. She's been on our show many, many times. Hello, my love.
Hi, darlings, and hello to everyone out there, no matter what time it is. We're all together, coming together within this amazing sacred container. And thank you so much to both of you for creating this for all of us around the world.
Oh, beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, my love. We'll keep cracking on because we've got so much to share and from you. And I know you're just such a beloved soul to so many of the people that are here in the live stream with us and will be watching afterwards. And I've got lots of photos. So let's just take it away, Raeline. What's been going on for you in Bali at the same time that Chris was in Vanuatu?
Yeah, well, Bali was it was beyond all of our expectations. It was phenomenal, really. And I didn't actually plan anything the whole time, which was quite incredible. I was just flying by the seat of my pants, really, and really just live streaming the whole time, which is what we're all doing now. We're all just live streaming. And it was really important that I just remained in that live streaming. And yeah, this photo was incredible because this is the priest of the most important temple in Bali, the mother temple. It's the dragon Vasuki Vasaki, and there's a beautiful story with the dragon Vasuki. It's Shiva's dragon or serpent, and it wraps around his neck. And this was amazing because there were all of us lined up. We all had different little objects that we wanted to have with us while we were in ceremony. We just went into ceremony. People were they weren't allowed in. They sort of closed the gates to us. And this all just happened spontaneously. It wasn't prearranged or anything like that. And we just had this whole ceremony with the dragon of the great mother temple of Bali. And yeah, so my rainbow serpent is now blessed, and I hold it now like a staff, and it's incredible. But before then we went to, and yeah, this is the rainbow serpent receiving the blessings from the mother dragon that lives in Mount Agung, the volcano on Bali. And we actually had an earthquake. And the same day where I live on the Mornington Peninsula also had an earthquake the same day, which is a very rare thing in in Melbourne.
Wow.
But yeah, there was an earthquake on, in both places, and we do live on a fault line with hot springs, but it's a very rare thing to have it. But there was something connecting in with those two places. But we went to the Snake Cave at Tunalot, and this place is a sea temple that you can only get to when the tide's low. And this whole area links the whole of the chakra system of the planet. So the rainbow serpent and the plume serpent meet in Uluwatu temple in the center of the temple floor and do this whole mating ritual. And that gets taken out all around the world. So they come from their big journey around all the chakras, and then the plume serpent, the only other place it happens is Lake Titicaca, where the rainbow serpent goes into the lake and comes up with the plume serpent. And then they go on their separate journeys and then meet again in the temple in Uluwatu. So I'm in the Snake Cave, which is this cave, and there's a snake bubba there. There's a snake charmer priest. And he just grabs the snake. I've been in this place many times, and this has never happened. And I've never seen it happen to the queues of people that line up. He just grabbed this snake and put it on the crown of my head. Then the snake wrapped around my neck, and it was coming down my back, like along my spine, the kundalini, and then wraps around my neck like Shiva with the churning of the milk ocean, where the devas and the asuras, the demons and the celestial, the gods and goddesses are having this tug of war, churning the milk ocean and creating the whole universe. And there's this whole poison that's collected, and Shiva takes it in his throat, but he doesn't swallow it. But Vasaki, which is the same name of the dragon at the Mother Temple in Agung, she wraps herself around his neck and isolates it in the throat chakra. Now, this is very significant with all the chakras because the throat chakra is Giza, and Giza is going through a major, major clear up. Okay, so this happened. Then I just felt suddenly he needs to take it off now. Okay, so when he took it off, she spat out this bright yellow venom, which I didn't see, but I felt it hit my finger and it was like burning. And later I learned that the black and white abandoned sea snake is 10 times more poisonous than a rattlesnake, and there isn't an antivenom. But yeah, that was quite phenomenal. But I went back a second time because I had 2 groups in Bali, and I went back for more. And this time it formed a figure 8, and he, instead of putting it on my crown, he put it over my third eye. And then she then came around and was like doing something with my hair with her tongue, which was quite incredible. And I mean, we were just in such awe. But what that for me showed me was that there's a whole upgrade going on with the chakra system. And what's happened is all the stargates are being upgraded along the spiral. Now, this spiral is our Milky Way is going back into alignment with the Andromeda galaxy. Okay, the Andromeda galaxy is really important for us because this is where we can anchor in, because it's almost like they put in this through the wormholes, the fake wormholes and the black holes. They created this looping system within our solar system where we couldn't quite get out of the holding pattern. That's totally shifted. So now our galaxy is back in alignment. And that's the 12,500 year prophecy since Atlantis, is that we're coming back in. We've passed the tipping point now of that story. And so with it,
hold that. I'm going to show this video, and because, wow, let's just have a look at what happened with the snake.
rising and falling.
So crazy, yeah. You sent me that, and I'm like, were you scared? And you said, no, it was
No,
too...
I had all the knowledge of the poison, but I understood something about that there was a Leela playing out in our realm, in our dimension, that ties in with this purging, because Bali is the purification center of our planet. So I knew there was going to be a purge. Now, the whole spinning out, which wasn't captured on film or on because we were sort of, in a sense, you know, so taken back and in awe. Nobody was getting out the phones and taking photos, but this purging, this venom that came out, this poison, was very much like, as I said, the churning of the milk ocean. But if we understand what Bali is, being the purification center of our whole planetary system, but not only is it the purification center, it's the nervous system. So we see this as the whole, you know, our pillar of light, our oceanic kundalini, the expansion of our consciousness is opening. So because it's, you know, our macrocosmos and our microcosmos are so interlinked, we can see that this has been a whole going up the evolutionary spiral of what's happening to our planet. So it was almost like the axiotonal lines were coming online for our whole planet, which hasn't been done in like hundreds, millions of that, you know, like, well, let's talk about it. Let's say 750 million years.
Wow. And this is why our Indigenous is so important. If people aren't focusing on our Indigenous, Raeline, I cannot emphasize it enough. There's so many distractions going on all over the world. And I want to say, and again, I'm going to come from a deep, loving heart space when I say this, what we're currently seeing in Gaza is not all that a lot of truthers are telling you and a lot of the mainstream. It's both. We need to do a whole show on it, but we're getting a glimpse into what the tadpole galaxy looks like, because
yes,
all the realms overlay each other. And if we don't have a sense of, I'm going to say this because I know a lot of people are triggered by this word. If we don't have a sense of karma, and what I mean by that is just balance, it's just the justice, it's just Lady Justice coming into balance. If we don't get a glimpse of that, we don't understand repercussions from our own actions. Now, not all beings that are going through what's happening in Gaza are nefarious or evil. That's not what I'm saying. Some people are there to have an experience as a soul of what pure depravity looks like. There's enlightened masters that have incarnated there. It's beyond what most people will tell you, and this is why you need to listen to someone like Raeline and Valerie when she comes on, because it's very important that we get out of this 3D, 4D mindset. We must start looking at things from other dimensional viewpoints. But carry on, my love.
Well, we then went to this place which was a hot spring at the end of the tour, and I felt that it was really important to go there. One, because Mount Bata as one of the chakras within Bali's like a swastika, an original swastika, not the inverted, misused swastika. It's a protection symbol, but it's more than that. So there are points all over Bali that connect in with the swastika to Mount Agug in the center. Now, I wanted to go to Mount Bata, and I knew there was a crater lake there, but I had never been to this particular crater lake. And I was doing it as a sort of like an integration and getting in the hot springs and getting with the minerals and getting in, to the telluric realm. Well, I got pulled in as soon as I got into the water, into the hot spring, into the pool. And I'm like, this is a direct gateway into the Shambhalic realms. So this is beyond Agartha. Okay, so what's happening is that there are certain stargates all around our planet that we know are being hijacked, and that there's the wars on our planet are not about wars, they're about bloodlines, and they're about stargates. Okay, so a lot of the wars are tied in with different star-seeded groups, angelics and fallen angelics. So there's a whole thing where what's called the Emerald Covenant. And when the Emerald Covenant, what's happening with the Emerald founder races and the Emerald Covenant is that they are now coming back online. A lot of the fallen angels have reneged on the deal time and time over. They've said that they will be part of the Emerald Covenant contracts, and people have just totally reneged on the deal. So can you still hear me?
Yes, darling. Yeah, we're with you.
Okay.
Here's the Emerald Lake that you were on, but just keep going, and I'll just pop some photos.
Okay, because your screen's freezing up, so I'm just not sure who's in.
Oh, we have lost her. We've lost you, Raeline. If you can hear us, she'll come back in. Valerie, are you there, darling? We might bring you in as well. Oh, here she is. She's already back.
It's because of what I'm talking about. So what's happened is I just spontaneously said, we got to get on the lake. And how do we get on the lake? I don't know. But I didn't tell any of the group. So we got on the lake and we met with Davy Danu, who's in the background there. And if you look at the color of the water, that is not touched up. The water is that color. When you touch it in your hands, it's pure clear. But when you look at it, it's just totally green. And I've never seen water this color on the planet anywhere. And Switzerland, you get really amazing colors with freshwater stuff, with sweet water. But this was amazing.
As Lindsay Lou put up the green heart, it's this heart portal that's activated, and nothing will stop this. Nothing will stop this now.
This is the emerald diamond that is inside our planet, and it's so this is some of the light that was coming through. The light was incredible, and this is Devi Danu. So she's the goddess of underground river systems, springs, lakes, all the freshwater stuff. And we see her, and we have aspects of her all around the planet. I'll be taking a group to Delphi in October, and we have, the Castalian Spring and the goddess of the Castalian Spring. So she's in different forms. But this is a merging of sweet water, salt water, and sky water. And when we have that alchemy happening, and we have that, our bodies talking, our waters, we're over 80% water. When the water memory in us starts activating and communing with these waters, phenomenal things happen. So what's happening is the human tribal she shield is becoming freed up now. So this is tied in with the 12 tribes. It's not of Israel. These 12 tribes are a universal construct. And basically it ties in with the 12 endocrine system. The endocrine system has been through a major upgrade in the last 2 weeks. Phenomenal. Okay, so the stars in our bones are receiving more data points. So there's more facets. Like if you look, there's more facets coming online. Okay, so if people are feeling their bones and their joints, it's part of, there's a clearing out of miasms in the body, but it's also, it's part of the axiotonal lines coming online. So,
and a lot of lymph drainage as well, I would say.
This is the endocrine system. It's all changing, and we're switching on from chakra system, 12, 15 chakra system and beyond, of course, 48 strands. I mean, we are now not operating. We never operated at 2-strand DNA. We never did. We're in a 3D construct. So therefore, we're always operating on minimum 3. Most are operating on 4. Why? Because we know that every man and his dog knows that time is sped up. Okay, so we're not in 3D linear time anymore. We know that. And most people are in and out of 5D, and the heart space is the beginning of it. And yes, it's a remembering. It's a putting back the dismembered parts of self. And part of this 12D, the 12 tribes, it's what I call the children of the heart, one heart race, Carrie, and I've spoken about them many a time. And they're the 4 color races that make up our tribal groups. The red, the yellow, the black, and the white. Okay. And now we're having the 5th element coming online, and we're having the 5th tribe coming online, and that's the blue races. Okay. So we're getting switched on.
Can I just tell you, with the blue races, I literally just said to Chris this morning, because I've been a little bit off the Pleiadians, love them, but to cut a long story short, they came through, streamed through, and said, look, stop throwing the baby out with the bathwater just because some have sort of gone more of a narcissistic, egotistical timeline, like many Earthlings have.
Yeah.
But they were showing me that this solstice in Uluru, to be aware, if people are seeing blue portals appear in the sky, that's them, particularly over this Australis region, Oceana, Lemurian region. They're very much helping our indigenous to keep rising. So the blue people I'm feeling are, the people with the Pleiadian codes in them very strongly.
Exactly. And basically, because Bali is the purification center, what it's doing is it's purifying the blood as it flows around the chakra system of the planet. But it's also the axiotonal lines run in the vertical, and then, the horizontal lines are our great ley arteries and ley lines. And so what's happening is there's a whole, since this this tribal shield has been reactivated in the angelic human, basically the blood covenants have been cleared out through the ley lines of our planet. So what that means is all the grids that they've been piggybacking off for the longest time have been had a big whoosho of a massive cleanse. And that's just happened in the last month.
Wow.
So our blood plasma is coming online. And I mean, while we were there in Bali, I mean, we had something like 20 X flares or something. It was just insane. And M-class flares constantly. So what I'm talking about, the stars in the bones, is, our golden blood plasma is really coming online with the solar blood plasma. Wow. So our cosmogenesis is well underway, and our galactic biology has switched on. So it's going to be fast and furious now. So all this relates to the planetary gates and the dimensional system, that is part of this Emerald Covenant. Like there are certain entities, that we can see, certain star seeds that have been overriding the Emerald Covenant. That's not happening anymore. Okay, so the Draconians are actually coming online now. Okay, and Nibiru was a big playing ground for duping of angelic humans, and these beings are all their influence on religiosity and governmental structures and all that. It's been cleared. It's like you pull the fan out of the plug, but it takes a while for the spokes to stop spinning. Let's just say the Emerald Covenant is back online. There is an agreement within certain races that have been manipulating humankind into worshipping them. The whole time we're in Bali, we went in as source-coded beings. So we went in with respect for, our elders and our brothers and sisters, but we did not go into a loving worship of these beings. And with that, a whole lot of stuff shifted, because the angelic humans were able to take back their rightful positioning and power, because we have held the original coding in place. And nobody can take that from us. All they can do is dupe us into thinking that we don't have what they have. But the hybridization programs, we have Anunnaki. We have Anunnaki DNA and bloodline in us, because these programs have been happening a long time. But the source code and the angelic human source code, they have it.
Oh, we've lost you, darling. Actually, I was going to come over to you, Chris, and we'll bring you on very, very soon, Valerie. I know that you're there. But I'd love you to talk, Chris, about the different draconian clans, because Alpha Draconis is, it's a beautiful star system. It's where Dragonians, where our dragons come from, the ascended Draco. So I'd love you we could probably go on for hours, but just, I know this could take a while, but in a nutshell, if you can, talk to us about the different clans of the Draco.
Well, first and foremost, it is an extraordinary star system, and one of the most important star systems that we have. Very ancient, one of the earliest, along with the Andromedan star system and also the Lyran star system. Obviously gets a little bit of a bad rap at times, and rightfully so. There is a mixed bag of licorice all sorts running through that particular system. But in answer to your question, as far as the more sort of the nefarious ones that have been around, which kind of infiltrated our beautiful planet here on Earth, we've had a long history with the Sikathurs. There's also been the Naboo, which are more along that lines of the complete grayness that they like to. We use this word to create sort of a grayscape. That's very much within their activities and their regimes. I guess you could call it. It's like a big power play. That wherever they go, it's really on their terms. It's like we're going to reconstruct the entire system that was in play and bring it over to what our regime is, and that is. Literally, we've seen that for generations here on Earth.
They depict it in a lot of movies too. The disclosure about, as you say, that kind of grayscale. They want to get rid of the green. Really, here the green heart, I suppose, the emerald. Yeah. they want us living because they don't need that to survive. We do as those angelic humans. Leah's just saying she keeps losing us. I think because we keep hitting on certain words that it's going to take this live stream and interfere with it. But hopefully we can keep going.
I just want to finish on that by saying that it's usually within the draconian system, you've got various species that come out of there. It's usually the breakaway factions. It's not the entire system itself. And it's no different to on planet Earth, where you've got breakaway factions that are causing major disruption. So if you can kind of visualize it in that way, I often like to call them sort of the B League. So it's like a rebel punk rock band that's sitting there spitting out songs about government and politicians and so forth. This is really what it is. These are these breakaway factions that can't be controlled, running to the beat of their own drum. And literally it's a cry for help, to be perfectly honest. They need to be heard, they need to be seen, but they've got to do it in a way that is so rebellious. So therefore the actions are illuminated. They're over the top. So I just want to make that point, that we're not putting the entire draconian system into that fishbowl. That is completely false. Yeah. These are literally breakaway factions that are causing major disruption. So
and you've got to be careful some of the narratives that circulate, because people love sharing things on social media. That's great. There's power in that, but always be discerning and go to someone like Raeline or Chris, or Valerie, who's got a long history of understanding how these particular species work, and that ultimately it's about unification. And as Raeline was saying, we embody all of it within ourselves. So if we go against that aspect, we've got an amygdala, we've got we've got a reptilian brain. We go against aspects of ourselves, then we're being self-destructive. It's about loving and embracing all aspects of self. And as we do that internally as the microcosmic being, it happens in the macrocosm. Now, Raeline, I really feel we'll get Valerie on, because you two will powwow, and we can keep going with some of these stories. So, Valerie, if you're there, this is an amazing lady that I've been following on Facebook, and it's kind of next level. Like she'll come in with these posts, and it's always like just the absolute confirmation, same as Raeline, absolute confirmation and sync up of what I've just seen, like literally just, I meditate at 3 a.m., like what I just see, and bang, there it is. And I know for many of you, I'm not the only one.
Welcome, Valerie.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Carrie and Chris, Raeline. I've enjoyed. There's so much that all of you brought. So thank you for opening up. Probably a 6-hour discussion.
Yeah, we really want to get into your knowledge, or knowing, maybe the better word, around the Atlantean timelines. But I'd love for you and Raeline to, because I know that you two will sync up a lot. But first of all, Valerie, I haven't really done introductions. There's going to be lots of information about these two ladies in the show notes that I'll go and add, so that you can find them and follow them. But tell us a little bit, because Raeline's been on the show heaps of times. Tell us a little bit about you, Valerie.
Oh, well, thank you. Wow. So I have been working this Gaia Orion universal blueprint since I had, I'll call it my second awakening in 2012. So I had been already practicing. I'm a Reiki master teacher. I was in the Akashic Records and the quantum, doing all sorts of things, and then had a child, so took some time off. With 2012, I really got the 2x4, and that's when the Atlanteans showed up and the Pleiadians showed up at the same time. So there was a really big, and very clear picture of why I was really here. So that started on this quite intense journey, as many of us had in 2012. And with my background in the Akashic Records, I started getting asked to step into mediate many different agreements. What I started realizing is the galactic and Gaia and what was happening, and was weaving all of this with my divine complement. So he and I were part of this very interesting on the ground gnosis, and all of my memories were flooding back in 2012. So I have been navigating those timelines, this Earth timeline, as well as working on the inner Earth. And much of my experience has been both in Atlantis and Lemuria. So I'm excited to share. No, I can't hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So what's been going on, Valerie? What's happening? You spoke on Facebook the other day, or you did a post the other day about where the rewrite of the Atlantean timeline. So maybe we've made deals somewhere in the past, and we need to revoke some of those deals that we've made. And I've had a download recently where I was talking to I call them the higher ups. They were saying, don't make any deals, stop making deals, because you make a deal here in the next galactic cycle, you're like, no, that's not what I want. So stay sovereign.
Yes, thank you for that. And yes, what I wrote, it was April 12th. So the Atlantean timeline, as I mentioned, opened up in January 2012. So that started the remembrance, and also, activating, I think as many of us were doing, activating the crystalline grid here on Gaia. So there was a lot of, let's power up this grid. That's my, the best way I can say it. And I think a lot of the 11-11-11 were about powering the grid, right? If you remember back then. So working at the Atlantis, a lot of it was, and I will mention there's more than one timeline. Just want to put that out there. It wasn't just one. We've had a couple different Atlantean experiences. So, the remembrance of, I was a priestess, and I also was working on technology. All of that started coming in. So what I wrote, just to paraphrase, deep rewrites in the Atlantis timeline, what I found was we were looping, it was 26,000 year cycle, which you could also then go into the Mayan, right? Because a lot of us also work in those Mayan calendars. So it was, through the years, kind of disconnecting not only our, this avatar, because I have done some work in the avatar body, but disconnecting from really the Akashic records, if you want to go deeper into that. A lot of the trauma that people run is just pulling from, this cycle, essentially. And so looking at 26,000 years, and then looking at what are most people running, what is the remembrance coming through in this body? And a lot of it's trauma. A lot of it's the last couple thousand years of, this repetitive cycle of abuse of power. And that's really what I was seeing is, how do we unhook all of these different abuses of power?
Yeah. And how would you describe that for us, personally, for the people listening? What are some of the processes that we can do to reclaim our power?
I do have some language. So in the process of opening up all of these Akashic databases, it also opened up all of the languages. So I speak a number of different languages, which came in handy when I was working on peace agreements. So I do have language because it communicates a little bit differently. And then I'll talk about what I said a few days ago, because it is relevant to, do you know what's happening? It depends also on somebody's remembrance. Can they activate or, access that lifetime or that timeline? So let me speak a little language, if it's okay. And then I'll kind of mention some ideas. Achahati shohotsa kai the fahatishan jail is the kosakoshan jaitama e ko akotachinja tohatai kohoto etaita sitsabushna chianto yartai ko okokayahataita sanda chochanchai pa patokaya lohotukasai ito patokai ka unaz chamba tia atotoa shato autakata ita sapatama chokan sanjai batohala batokasai shishovrochai enachotchaka sanjama etokotai pa. So essentially, roughly what I said, because the Atlantean timeline, and you mentioned water, which there's so many of us embodied from Atlantis. So that water dream, that reoccurring, right, wave of water is yes, a visceral response, because it's in our gnosis, it's in our physical, it's in this avatar, I guess is the best way to say it. So to embody, to move into this grounded 12th dimensional avatar, which everyone has access to. That's a very important point. A lot of the work, when I had that awakening, and what I was told was I was here to update the emotional guidance system and also to work on the DNA for the avatar. And that's some of the work I was doing in Atlantis. I did have a remembrance of doing that. I did do some of the experiments. I will admit that, because I had to also look at the places and spaces that I was in that, you know, weren't in the highest, right? So it's really just moving through that remembrance and, you know, acknowledging you might have to manually disconnect if you're looping the same situation. So, you know, it's also giving us that insight into our own Akashic record, which you mentioned, you know, being in Vanuatu and the locals, and, you know, many of our ancestors had that direct connection with the land, with the stars. It was a very symbiotic relationship.
Yes,
so
and you were going to move there at one point, weren't you? You were drawn around the same time that I was drawn, and we were going to maybe catch up there. And then you've been in other areas doing your grid work.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating.
Well, I think I might have mentioned at that time what I was told, because I've worked with both Atlantis and Lemuria. When I stood on the island, when I went to Vanuatu and stood, it might have been on the main island, that would signal a peace between Atlantis and Lemuria. That's what I was told.
Yes, because and Raeline, you can add more in here, but for those who have brought their memories online, there is a sense that Lemuria and Atlantis were crossover civilizations.
Absolutely.
A little bit of argy-bargy, and the Atlanteans growing more into the technological timeline. Very similar to what's happening here today. It's all the same. It's all the same storylines. Just going around and again, just trying to raise really internally our own consciousness to break through. But there's a sense that there was a sonic boom technology that was used really to bury Lemuria, and so this is this rising, as Chris said, the Lemuria rising. But it's about unification with the all, because we're all of it, as Raeline, you know, was saying before. And I'll let you finish that, what you were saying before your video dropped out, Raeline. You were talking about you know, the aspects of self, the archons. We're all of it.
Yeah, well, this story is, you know, the Draco Zetas came in with Atlantis, and, you know, they were, you know, just obsessed with, you know, genetic coding. And so one lot were obsessed with genetic coding, another lot were obsessed with being worshipped and adored. And so, you know, this is a whole thing that happened where, yes, there was a sinking, but that template and that etheric sheath that is Lemurian Atlantis remained. That did not go. Just the sinking of the lands went, but the whole etheric sheath remained throughout, and has always remained throughout. And this is where we talk about, you know, with Uluru and Bali, and the connection between Sahul, and, you know, if you can pull up that imagery, Carrie, of the maps. This is, you know, and Valerie speaks to this too, with the land bridges. Yes. And, you know, we've got the raising of so this was called Sunderland, you know. So we're talking about Atlantis was in Bali, Atlantis was in Australia. If you go to, you know, across the Nullarbor Plain, there were two brothers, very much like what the strong men say about you know, Egyptians and Atlanteans being in Australia, you know, with the Gosford glyphs. Similar story. We can see these land bridges. So in the center there is Antarctica, which is the high altar of Lemuria. And then we have, Australia down the bottom. That's actually Australia upside down. And then we have South America. So we can see how this was all connected.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when we talk about this, we're talking about, this is also tied in with the Emerald Covenant, because the Emerald Covenant isn't just, an off-planetary team. There's also the Emerald Covenant as within every kingdom collective of our planet. And when we're communing with trees, when we're speaking with waters or exchanging our water codes, we're in excess, in a sense, we are accessing the Emerald Covenants that we have, that are part of the blueprint of our planetary spheres and realms, which, of course, Atlantis and Lemuria are a part of, because it's still there in the etheric. And people say, oh, is land going to sink? Is land going to rise? I believe it's a bridging of consciousness. And, I have cards, and this is called Bridging Consciousness. And it is, at the moment, we are two world walking. And when you work with grid work and planetary work, you bilocate and you trilocate. A lot of the gateways are,
show us that again, darling. I've got you on solo layout now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bridging consciousness.
Yeah.
So we can see this is bringing in dimensional aspects of ourself through our source code. This is our DNA coding,
Mm-hmm.
our axiotonal lines, but the main soul line of the axiotonal line is the vertical axis. But we have two types of planets here, and we have all different. We can say these are different dimensional facets of ourself that are very expert at doing things that our personality self and our ego self hasn't got a clue what's going on. Like, when I wrote my first book, I was like, oh, I can't write a book and I don't know about computers. It's like, yeah, step aside. Angelina knows how to write this book. And so this is it's an angelic aspect of myself. So, I consciously work with 5-dimensional aspects of myself, know them by name and what their, job descript is, and what their, amazing gifts and talents are. And so you bring in these, are they true self? No, but they are facets and of ourself that can get the job done dimensionally.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so
There's another show, if anyone's interested, in the Lightworkers Lounge, and I can put a link in, but that I did with my mum, and she went through, I think it was 15 dimensions, and she'd done a artwork, and she'd
Beautiful.
got the names for all of them. And it's not that she knows them all. She's getting to know them all, but she was able to stream through, and it was a powerful technique using art to do it. So yeah.
I love that.
So we are bridging consciousness dimensionally, and that's what is happening with all these so-called land bridges. We're putting back the dismembered parts of self, planetary and personally. The macro, cosmic. We're going through a macro and a micro cosmogenesis, and because we're made up of the same elemental and molecular structure, we're coming along for the ride. And some of us are kicking and screaming all the way, and some are having a little merry jig along the way. And,
or both.
Or both. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I have more language.
More light language. More light
Yes.
language. Did you say? Bring it on, baby. Bring it on.
Are you finished, Raeline? I don't want to.
No, go.
Oh, okay.
Go. More light language.
I want to mention before I speak, originally how this came about with Carrie is, back, I think it was 2017, I was really tracking Tikal, which is in Guatemala. And at that time I was stationed, but I was working with others in the field. And what I had found was Tikal, which is a very important pyramid structure, and I think possibly the only one that faces west. The rest face east. So what I heard was that this ascension cycle that was supposed to happen, especially with the indigenous around the world, that did not happen. And I went digging, and it was because the energy was being siphoned off planet. So I had known that there was a timeline, because I used to look around and say, well, why isn't everyone else in this ascension cycle? You know, a lot of us are in it. And so that was just a really interesting, and that's a whole story, because that was Orion, and I've done a lot of Orion. I've had to do a lot of Orion work. So I just wanted to mention that, because that relates to what you were saying. So it was kind of like, okay, a lot of us were doing the work, and then, okay, now it's time to sit back, because whoever's embodied on that land has to step into that role.
That's right.
A lot of us do the energetic work and the grid work, and now the physical work of, I can't go to Hawaii and stand up. I mean, maybe I could, but it's not my place. I haven't. That's not what I was guided to do.
Yeah, so that's such a big point. Thank you. Thank you for that. Because that's right.
A good point about Orion is, Orion gets such a bad rap, but, Orion is where all duality, all the polarity pull, gets into a singularity at Orion. It gets pulled into and so what this does is it blows everything out. So not only that, Mintak is not only a stellar nursery, it's where our umbilical cords can hold within the creational point of our universal time matrix.
Right.
Okay. So these get thrown out, but they can never be totally overtaken. So Orion is really important within the creational myths and holding the umbilicus in place, the organic umbilicus. But there's all these false umbilical cords,
right.
For example, Glastonbury is riddled with false umbilical cords, riddled, because that's just how it rolls when But
and you were saying, Raeline, that when we were having a chat yesterday, you were saying about that we've lined up now with the Orion Stargate. So
yes, so the birth canal is aligned. The birth canal, but not just to the surface. This is going in the lineup that's happened through Andromeda and Orion and our sun is phenomenal, because our inner sun is now back in. The transponder's been switched on. What does that mean? That means the relay between the sun and our inner sun is really in clear communication now.
Yes.
Okay. So what does that mean? That means the sun in us is in clear communication now.
Yes.
And why are there so many X and M class flares constantly now? Because we, as I said, right as I come on, we are now live streaming. We are now live streaming. So that's what I said. When I went to Bali, I wasn't allowed to have any preconceived ideas of what I was going to do or what I was going to speak about or what I was going to. There was no teaching involved. And people can say, you don't have any notes. You don't have any, I said, because I'm flying by the seat of my pants. I'm being told to live stream. And this is how, and we are all able to live stream now.
Right.
And what the live streaming is, it's particularly tied in not just with the hearing, because when I was communicating with the snakes don't hear. They don't have that physical sense of feeling. So it's all frequency and listening to the frequency. And like with Valerie, being able to interpret the transmissions and not color it, color it with our, because it bypasses the brain when we speak language, light language. So we can't color it with our ideas. It's coming through so fast, and it's speaking to these parts of ourselves that are, the cells start zinging.
Yes.
Wow. I love it. It's so important for people listening here who may not, have the inner guidance to be more in the public eye. Don't ever underestimate that when you're sending out telepathy through an activation you've just received, you send it out within the collective hologram, so to speak. We are receiving it. So never underestimate yourself. You don't have to have a big social media following or have written a book or any of these things.
No.
You are part of this movement, and trust it and know it, and keep, if I want to keep something really to myself, I'll announce that. But if I want to say this is for the collective, I'll just do a telepathic send.
Right.
I may not do it on Facebook because half the time I'm getting trolled and censored and slandered. So I'm like, bugger is on. You're not getting the good codes anymore.
Yeah.
For the ones that have reached the telepathic space.
I know, but and I avoid things like supermarkets. Like my partner's the 50% off man. He's like, if anything's half price or whatever, he's onto it and he'll buy $1 million. But he sends off in that he relishes in going to supermarkets. And I'm just like, great, because I don't. But recently I have been into supermarkets, and for me, they're just death aisles. That's all I can see, death aisles. But every now and then, I'll turn the corner in an aisle and someone will just be looking at me and they go like that. And like where before, it was like get in, get out quick. There's people that are connecting with me and just smiling. You can see there's more and more people that are just, they're recognizing who's who in the zoo now.
Right.
And they're switching on. And I just found it interesting that it's changing. It's changing. Yeah, even, the densest places, where we need to hang out too. And
yes,
sometimes the density going in there, and there's this whole debate about eating meat, not eating meat, drinking alcohol, not drinking alcohol. I just say, listen to your body.
Right.
Okay. It'll tell you exactly what you need. And sometimes you've got to go into a density to make a shift. Sometimes we get so hooked into certain things,
right,
where we can't go up in a frequency unless we do this modulation thing. And so at a planetary level, what we've been doing.
You've made a decision ahead of time how you need to act, which a lot of people white knuckle through life. Like, if I just get it right, I'll be okay. Then they have all this guilt because they break their own rules.
Exactly. And
this is synchronicity in the moment.
Right. Can I jump in?
Nobody's having our experience of us, and nobody's having, it's like, do you authentically, you know, like, don't imitate me perfectly, because you'll know that it's not going to work for you. You're not going to have a fun time of that down the track.
Exactly.
I've got a funny story, but I'll let Valerie jump in first. And it's about
I just want to say, Raeline, because what you were saying about what happened in Bali, I got the same message. I'm not teaching anymore. I'm storytelling. And also, part of me going on the land, I've been traveling for 8 months, was get out, meet everybody, get your feet on the land, go to the grid points that you've been working remotely, and also be with others that might not be in the same frequency. I noticed I was put with the next generation coming up to share the frequency, share what's been happening. So I'm seeing there's a shift in what I'm doing, and also I think what many of us are doing. Like you said, most of the time I just show up. It's just, and everything gets beautifully orchestrated. It just happened in Mount Shasta. I was there for the equinox, and there was no plan. Everything just started happening. People were showing up. So my daughter, my dragon daughters were showing up. There was all of the support was there without any planning whatsoever. There was zero planning. I was there for over 2 weeks. So there's a lot of pieces, and also it's moving so fast. So, it's the time, right? So now when you're going through the spiral, because I see everything as the spiral, we're going in and then we come back out, how fast we're going in, and then we come back. So I track that. Maybe that's my quantum person, my quantum architect side, but I track how that spiral moves and how we move as a collective. I do have language. So let me jump in, because I think it's also some Orion language. Okay, let me jump into it because I want to see. This is also about Andromeda, because for me, Andromeda is, the fall, right? Especially Adam and Eve is the archetypal story of the fall of the Milky Way from Andromeda. So there's a lot of pieces that I've been weaving over the years in this archetypal story. Chichaldan chisovushtatsa chokatsambotahotoetai ijokai amano ela itakosabotande shanjo kai tamait sikaldo tukasan chamba tikamano khanato katsecha chikai alaro tukashabai katsambota tia amalo tukosanje and tambato anche katsu jamachia no atai esa dokotakai ama itakia doratakai sarjanjai shapatoe yamano halatokai anane itokasachari ita isa katsanjaba chakansea tanda torto shamba shikasanja chai sundo chamba ama itakasaba rotakama la ukutash de sambato hatakai potate atai sapanona ayamanai ita. So it's like we're, in this stepping down, is because that's what I'm seeing. we're translating, Raeline was saying a little bit, we're translating between those realms and a lot of that Andromeda consciousness, because we're physically reconnecting the galaxies. I mean, it's a physical event. It's not just, an esoteric event. We've already started connecting. So there's,
and it's true even from a scientific perspective, Valerie,
yes,
that in 40 billion years and time is nothing, that Milky Way and Andromeda will actually rub up against each other. And they're really twin flames, there's a twin flame coupling.
Yes.
It's the same galactic, beautiful, romantic twin flame, love story that we're going on within self. So it's and then we find our twin flame, maybe they're on Earth at the moment, maybe they're not.
Right.
Maybe they're guiding us from another realm.
Yes.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. But I do want to say and thank you. The light language is just, it's beyond light language what you do. It's sort of beyond light language, really. Yeah. It's interestingly about the eating of meat, and Chris and I have been vegan, and we were in Vanuatu with my mother Zoe, and we were doing some grid work, calling back souls. I actually grew up on a farm here in Australia where we had, unfortunately, Nevan people, as well as the New Caledonian people, the Kanaks as they call them, who were part of the cotton farming way back in the day in the 1800s. And they were blackbirded. So they were taken, by the white skin, sailed over there and promised them to, be paid and have a different experience. And, of course, they were slaves. And there were graves actually on the farm that I grew up on. And so Mum, Chris and I were doing work in Vanuatu to call their souls back. And as this happened, I was in transitioning to find a place, wanted to set up a New Earth retreat, still developing that. I received guidance from, all I was told it was a chief. It was a chief. He was my grandfather from a past life. It was a chief. Fast forward to the story I told just earlier, I now know it's Chief Takao, who we met in spirit. But he told me, on from what Raeline was saying, he told me that, I did need to eat meat. He said, you need to eat meat. You need to eat our cows. He said, because, first of all, in Vanuatu, it's all organic. They roam the fields. It's no harm's done to the animal. They're looked after. People really look after their animals there. And he said, but you need to ground, you need to tether to this land. He said, if you want to live here, he said, you need an initiation and you need the codes of the cow. Now, I grew up on a farm where we did eat a lot of, we slaughtered our own cows. And I even have a trigger this day to that word, but I'm willing to go there because I know a lot of people do eat meat. There's so much division that's going on. We need to address these things. If people want to, badmouth me after this, well, that's your choice. But this came as a direct message from the chief, and it reminded me of my childhood, and I went back to the experiences on the farm, and I was linking all of these elements together. And then when I did finally get to where our little shack is now, and had met Chief Natu, Chief Takau's brother, and I was I'd eaten the meat, and I was like, okay, what's going on? And I was sitting in meditation, and I was asking for divine guidance. Please show me, what do you want for us? Do we need the codes of the animals? Are we, in fact, if we flip it on its head, are we, in fact, dishonoring the animals by not taking on their codes? Do they sometimes want their codes to integrate with us? It helps their evolutionary cycle. They're in service. Are we not seeing clearly? Have we got it wrong? I don't believe in mass raising and mass cruelty. That is satanic, in my opinion. So there's a lot of nuances here. But literally, I was in meditation. The next thing I heard Chief Natu, because they just turn up to your house. They don't text. It's there. It's like, oh, hello, Carrie. Hello. And I'm like, oh, my God. He came and he told me this story about how he got initiated into being a chief, and they must actually go and kill a wild boar. And it's you would never dishonor their traditions. We're talking like traditions, I don't know, Raeline, what, millions of years? We don't know.
Yeah.
Millions of years. I'm not going to sit there like some vegan fake woke wannabe going, you got it wrong, Chief Natu. Like that's
that actually happened to us at the Mother Temple. We were coming out of the gates, and there was a whole big basket of kanangsari, which is the daily offerings, but then there was a big one, and it had a baby duck in it. And everybody was freaking out, and I said, the way this ceremony operates, that soul is getting liberated, moksha.
Yeah.
And so they're actually in a better position than you right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is hard to get your head around. It's hard to get your head around.
So, yeah.
Well, I think you said it's the intuition.
The way it's done.
It's the intuition.
The ceremony and the honoring is done.
Right. It's all about the intention. But I've gone through various pieces of, there's times when, the Pleiades will come in, because that's one of my main aspects. And it's like, eat very light, just eat light food. And because it's what's happening on the planet or what I'm going through. But there'll be times when I need something a little bit denser, especially with grid work. Those of you who do grid work understand, you usually have to ground. So it's intuitive. There's times that I'm not really eating any meat or a little bit. So it really does depend. But, we're also, as our light body expands, more and more people aren't needing as much food in general, not just meat, but it's also based on where the light body is at.
Exactly.
We're at a higher state. So
and it's generally more fruit, more fruit in your diet is going to give you that light coding.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's sort of a misnomer we're going anywhere, because we're just bringing more in. So we need to anchor in, and we need to alchemize. Yes. And so we can't be just floating around, getting off on our navel, in the universe, and this is the whole point of what's happening with this alignment with the Andromeda. The Andromedan galactic core has aligned with our galactic center. That's what's happening. Okay. Yeah. So what that means is we are finally intersecting again with the original core of creation. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so what has also happened in these universal time matrices are not set in stone, and they've been going through another octave on the spiral. And that's filtering down to us. So it's incredible what's been happening. And this is where there are aurora platforms, okay, that create passageways between our Milky Way galaxy and the Andromeda galaxy. And this is what's happening. And that's going to be stepping up at a rate of knots now as well. So the whole X-flare, the CMF, the whole aurora stuff, just watch it, and your body will tell you, and this is part of the live streaming as well, because before people say, oh, this has happened, that's happened, we've had an X-flare at this time, your body will feel it. It'll feel it maybe 12 hours before. It'll kick in a day before. You will feel it. You'll feel it in your nervous system. The stars in your bones will tell you. Your body will tell you before NASA or any of these platforms are saying what's happening. And just go to those platforms to confirm what your body's already telling you. And I'm now learning to adjust the X flare and the M flare, what they are doing within the body. So it's going now to a whole new level of what's shifting in the body through what level of X class, like within what measurements is doing within our bloods, within our bone marrow, within our endocrine system. That's kicking in now. So this is the live streaming part that I'm talking about, and the transponders switching on.
Right.
Yeah. And to all my graduates that are here listening, you guys know, because this is how we've always taught you, is to channel. And this is why a lot of our graduates are very, very successful, because they are live streaming, and they have been for quite some time. So I love that you're hitting on this, Raeline.
Yeah.
So let's start to wrap it up now, because, we are coming up. I knew it was going to be a long one. So thanks for sticking with us.
Can I just say one last point?
I want you all
that is that since this frequency netting has been dismantled, right, the human reincarnational cycle, which has been caught in that net in the lower astral or the lower 4D realms, has now been lifted. So we are no longer going through these reincarnational death cycles in the lower astral anymore. That's been shifted. So we've got this free band now to go omnidimensional, basically. So I really wanted to express that point as well, as being a really, and Tamalot, the sea temple, rhymes with Camelot.
Oh.
A lot of these openings, like the Spine of Albion, it opened through Tamalot in Bali.
Yeah, there was a lot
for the next layering of this universal time matrix.
Right.
Well, Chris's dad, who was with him out in the open seas of the South Pacific, his name is Arthur, and we know when we went in to do the astral afterwards, there was a lot of King Arthurian energy coming through. Lady of the Lake, Neptune. Look, we could go on for hours, I think.
Right.
The Lady of Mount Bato.
Yep.
Like,
all that's coming up.
Like Tahoe.
Yeah, I was just in Mount Shasta.
It's all
Direct
the
connect
water.
doorway.
All the water.
Chris
the
mentioned
Chintamani stone activated the crowning jewel of Shambhala. It's all opening up.
Yes.
It's all opening up.
We Chris and I had done astral mission a little while ago now, and Camelot had come through, and I don't know much about the financial system, but we saw the resetting was the old way of Camelot before there was interference, where anyone in a kingship leadership position looked after their people. Everyone was given free land to grow their own food. So we're going to cycle back into that kind of
Avalon.
Way.
That's a very important timeline, is Avalon. And one that I saw was the major rift in many ways, right? But that is definitely a big part. And ironically, I was at the Avalon campground in Sedona last month doing some really important grid work there. And also because Sedona is such a multidimensional planetary, it's really under the galactic, actually.
Yeah.
So ended up doing a very 3-day galactic meeting that I didn't even know I was doing, but it made a lot of sense because the importance of the red rock and the water and what's in the water, the iron and some of the metals are really important for the planet, not just for that grid. So there's just been some very interesting places and spaces, but I was mentioning Shasta, where I was for spring equinox. And when I landed, I heard root to root. And I was working on connecting that route with Santa Fe, New Mexico, another very important route over on this side of the world. But also, of course, Shasta is still the root, although it is a multidimensional chakra system. It still holds a lot of the root. And it's like Uluru and Shasta for me are obviously the most important grid points, because one and the root and the solar. So I just want to say that in my closing.
Yeah, Uluru. I mean, what's happened in Bali is because what's happening in Uluru.
Yes.
And you know, as a master solar template.
Yes.
And you know, this is why everything's coming online at a rate of knots.
Amazing. I'm going to let Chris finish off, but Earl Fields, we share the same last name, Earl.
Oh.
You're like a royal person bringing the energy through the fields. Just dialing it back a bit when we were talking about food, should fasting be a part of this? If your guidance says to do so, yeah, absolutely. You will reach higher consciousness. Maybe let me rephrase. You will reach a different aspect of your consciousness through fasting. I don't want to get into terms good, bad, right, or wrong. I don't do that.
It's all frequency. Just remember that.
Yeah. You have to listen to your bloods. Okay. Yeah. Re-fasting. Your bloods will tell you everything. You know, and the whole thing with it, that's how we digest, and that's how we integrate. I mean, I intermittent fast for 20 hours every day. And that's just what I've been doing, and it suits. Every now and then, I'll be shown something else, but that's a protocol that I just follow.
We often just drink fresh squeezed juice through the day, and it will fill you up. People think, oh, you won't be full, but drink more juice, and then I mean, we just have a normal dinner. So, but Chris is an amazing gardener and grows food, so we're getting high nutrients all the time. That's the main thing. As Raeline said, get out of the supermarkets. Unless you're sent in there as a starseed to, if your guidance is you've got to just, starseeds often want to stay at home because they can't cope, but often they need to be out there amongst everyone, just sharing frequency, not doing anything, not saying anything.
Exactly. I mean, your garden will teach you so much, it will teach you so much. I mean, the growth cycles and everything about your garden will just, it's just amazing. I mean, I just picked the biggest head of broccoli, to have with dinner last night. And it's just, it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding.
Love all you guys here. I'm going to let the man speak because the ladies, he's so beautiful and so patient, isn't he? Just sitting there like Buddha, holding space. So we ladies go, no. So let's allow Chris to close this off for us.
Oh, look, I'm the thorn between three roses here, so I'm learning to blossom. But look, the feminine frequency at the moment is rising like it never has before. This earth has changed since the age of Aquarius, really. And that feminine archetype is now becoming, I wouldn't say the leader, it's more of an integration between the two because there's been such a masculine dominance here for such a long period of time. So to listen to majestic goddesses outlay what their visions are and their experiences are really is a humbling experience for a very masculine guy to sit here and just receive. So I feel honoured, to be perfectly honest. So it's not me just sitting here being silent. It's like, oh my God, I feel like I could self-combust.
And there's a reason, I'll just say, because the Atlantis is the masculine experience. So that's the 2,000 year, the 26,000 year, but in our matrix, it's the last couple thousand years that has been the Atlantis overlay. That's why it was so important that got unhooked. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to fully, reveal itself in the 3D yet, but just to be aware of it, because now everybody can create without that, that interference. That's the organic coding Raeline was mentioning, and I mentioned the organic blueprints, original blueprints, however you want to call them. So now we're creating without all of the interference. So very important.
Wow, that is so powerful. I mean, if you see me shaking, I'm getting like the full goosies. Magical beings. Thank you so much. And to all the beautiful energy coming through.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
comments and people
Thank
here.
you.
So big tribe.
Yay!
That's our tribe. Let's keep going. We've got all the support. 3D gets rocky. Of course it does. 3D is 3D.
Yeah.
You're grinding sometimes,
Yeah.
and you think that you're making things up too, because you'll come out of dream state. A lot of people are going into lucid dreaming. A lot of people are learning to astral travel, doing it while conscious. Call it meditation, call it whatever you want. Trust yourself, trust yourself, trust yourself. That is my big message for everyone. Trust yourself. You're not crazy. You're not making it up. If you say it's your imagination, that's when you know it's real, because there's an imaginative portal called the third eye that can be anywhere, in any galaxy, in any timeline, in any dimension, in the now moment. Now. This is when it's happening.
This is it. Yeah.
This is it. So bring it on. Let's keep going, Chris.
I guess just for my final wrap, they keep telling me that this has to be said, and it's to do with Lemuria, and it's obviously the time that I was on the journey from Espiritu Santo down to Afate, which is, as I was saying before, the North Island down to the South Island. That 27 hours that I was on the boat, a vast majority of it was spent in meditation, because that's the only place you could go. And some messages that came through, which I wanted to share with everyone today, was that there was two very strong ones that came through. Some deities that I spoke to was Lady of the Lake. There was also Neptune, and a new guy who I hadn't spoken to, and I didn't even know he existed, and announced himself as Polaris. And the way that it was explained to me is Neptune is the king of the seas, and Polaris is the creator of the seas. I don't know whether that's wrong or right. What I'm telling you is what I got downloaded. Anyway, this Polaris fellow was explaining to me, particularly we were talking and touching about the ley lines earlier, that the ley lines between the Lemuria to Africa is one of the most important underground systems that we've ever been involved with on this planet. And he said that is where a lot of the hijacking has been taking place, and a lot of the messages have not been getting through from the various deities on this planet. Literally, if you could imagine, they have now been cleaned, like a gurney has gone through the middle of them. So you're starting to see the aquifers and so forth back in Africa re-springing and coming back to life. It's becoming more of that fertile land again, because Africa, the way that we see it over the many years, has been sabotaged. It's very much a desolate area, not much grows. Well, that's not how it's always been. Africa's been one of the most fertile continents this planet has ever seen, and it's starting to reshape itself. The reason he was saying that this was occurring is that there is a timeline or a vortex in the middle of Lemuria that is protected. And they are the gatekeepers there, that they are able to shift this timeline and this vortex at any given moment because what they're doing is creating, this is my words coming through now, this is what I would call the crystalline transcendental highway. It is a vortex of importance that is able to take us through to our higher dimensions when we are ready. So it's like being sucked out like a vacuum cleaner. I know this is all sounding a little bit galactic at the moment, but it's an important message that they asked me to bring through, was that particular portal and the ley lines is connected. So therefore, this is the reason why it's having a big steam clean at the moment, and it's becoming more prominent, and we are starting to feel our resonance is connecting back to it. The reason I believe this was explained to me was in order to let people know that our Lemurian soul part of us is coming back into activation. And we're all connected to Lemuria in some way. So therefore, if you're starting to feel a lot more emotional, you're starting to feel those water elements come through to you, or you're starting to feel like you're either moving in a direction that you probably didn't realize you had within you, a lot of that is your Lemurian codes coming back online. So I just wanted to sort of explain that as best as I could. I hope it makes sense.
Makes sense to us and people listening.
Yeah, I just felt that.
And you know, I mean, this could be a whole show, but what's happened to Africa with the negative draconian clans, the Chirahuri, that have. I mean, we're gonna probably get wiped off the off Facebook here for saying this, but they're the ones that have been into stealing children and what they do with children. That's sort of the seed point of all of that horror. But that's another show, and people can decode the rest. But it's very significant in what Chris is saying, that has been blasted clean. And Raeline, you were touching on that too.
Yeah, well, it's a whole misnomer. Actually, Africa is our wealthiest continent on the planet. Yeah. The resources coming out of Africa are incredible, and the rich stellar lineage coming out of Africa. When we look at Dogons and we look at the whole story, it's just a lie that's been fed about this whole third world stuff. It's just absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
And
they want Raeline off. They're like, no, Raeline, you cannot.
I'm not doing it. I just want to
going now.
I mean, it's just water off a duck's back. You just ignore, and you just come back online.
Africa.
Back on the street like you didn't miss a beat. And that's what's happening. And why is this happening now? Why are we going to see Africa becoming more in the forefront as it should be? Also because the Lemurian records are actually held in underneath those lands, the Lemurian records. And so, this is really important, what's happening in that sense as well, that things are being handed back to the rightful indigenous races, and their stellar counterparts are coming on board, and all the reneging of these Emerald Covenants, from certain beings that said they were going to come on board and then turned around and just rewrote their own records in all different mineral varieties. That's all changed now. As I said, we've reached the tipping point.
I can see that.
I have a whole Africa piece, and I just want to mention before we get off the animals, I have worked with the animal kingdoms in Africa. So that is a completely separate situation. They are waiting to come back into the fold.
Well, so they're holding the star mirrors. These migration paths that the animals are doing, they're doing our job for us with the ley lines. So these migration paths are actually star mirror ley lines. They're star lines. And I got shown this a few years ago when a very good friend of mine in Sweden kept going back to Africa, and she's like, well, what is it? Why do I have to keep going back here? I said, well, you're tuning into this. These migratory paths are not just on the surface Earth. They're actually, as I just said, opening up these star lines and these star mirrors on our behalf. And this is all part why I say the kingdom collectives are all part of the Emerald founder races and the Emerald orders, and they're assuming certain bodies to do the job in a 3D level that we can't do and cannot be manipulated by certain fallen angelic races. So it's all perfectly orchestrated.
Oh, look, here's my beautiful mum. We've got a shout out to this gorgeous soul.
Yes,
I'd say my greatest teacher. Other than my inner divine and Chris, of course, and Raeline and Valerie, and all of you all out there that are listening. We're all one.
Those
African animals are the most majestic souls anyone can imagine. And look, I mean, again, people might just unfollow me for saying this, but it did download as you were saying that about the animals, Raeline, that's possibly why many people who were vegan are being asked to ingest in the rightful way, in the honourable way, some, flesh again, because it could be the quickest way to get the codes into the human for the upgrade. So we have to see this multidimensionally. There is no death. It doesn't exist. We're just changing form. So
absolutely, it needs reiterating for sure.
Yeah, and we're all, the animals are here to serve as we're here to serve. We're all here to serve if we switch the heart on. And that's not sacrifice of self. That's when we serve the all, we are looked after within that. So, look, I know we could just keep
I know we can keep going. We need a whole thing of Africa because the animals aren't just here to serve. They're here to co-lead with the humans. They're not, they're ready to lead. They used to be much more involved with us. dolphins, the whales, the apes. So, I do a lot of that peace agreements between the realms. That's one of the things that I do. So
Beautiful.
I'm throwing that out there as my final word.
Yeah, you've read my mind. We'll be
Kemet
back.
is rising. Kemet is rising,
Yeah.
and there's no stopping, the
Right.
rising of Africa.
Yeah.
People think that Egypt is the Middle East. It's not. It's Africa. And Kemet is rising.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to get back there.
Yeah, that's coming up too.
And we're reconnecting with our sentient beings as well. The dolphins and the whales, which,
Yes,
as Valerie was saying, they were the majestic leaders of this planet for many hundreds of years, and their ability to communicate and the clicks and the squawks and the sounds that they make is a language within itself, and it's a star language. So we're all coming back online, reconnecting with Mother Nature and the beautiful flora and fauna that's here.
Yeah,
right.
Beautiful. Well, we will be back and doing the show on Africa. So I love you all. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Namaste till next time.
Thanks.